Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here. Let's talk about Wallace and Gromit. Wallace is a clumsy, cheese-loving inventor who lives with his smart dog Gromit in the north of England. Both created by British animator Nick Park, they've starred in 4 short films and 1 feature-length film. Wallace and Gromit are quite possibly 2 of the most recognisable British animated characters in the world. Whenever people don't understand me when I say that I'm a stop-motion animator, I just have to ask that person, do you know Wallace and Gromit? And they go, oh yes, now I know what you're talking about. They're that famous. I used to watch the Wallace and Gromit short films quite a lot as a kid. I actually owned the shorts on a recordable VHS because my parents had recorded them off the telly each Christmas. I have fond memories of that VHS tape. I remember that it started with the ending of the Clint Eastwood film Paint Your Wagon. Then an animated BBC ident of a falling piano came on screen, and bam, the beginning of A Grande Day Out started. Ah, good memories. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about all 4 original Wallace and Gromit shorts, starting with A Grande Day Out. In A Grande Day Out, Wallace and Gromit decide to go on holiday to the moon, which is actually made of cheese. While the 2 enjoy crackers and moon cheese, a robot patrolling the moon finds our heroes. Not only does this robot feel angry at Wallace and Gromit for stealing the moon's cheese, but he also wants to use their rocket ship to have a ski holiday on Earth. This short was actually a student project for Nick Park. He started working on it as a graduation project at the British National Film School in 1983. Then, in 1985, Aardman Studios helped him finish the film. For a student film, A Grande Day Out is beyond impressive in terms of production values. Sure, the short looks crude when compared to the standards set by future Wallace and Gromit films, but considering that this was all animated by 1 student, it's pretty damn good. As someone who has made 2 student animations of my own while at university, I can certainly appreciate the craftsmanship and dedication that Park put into A Grande Day Out. There's lots of cinematic shots that feel lifted from classic Hollywood movies, and the intricate realism of the props and backgrounds add an authentic touch to the film. Making a stop-motion short with little resources and a limited time can be restraining, yet Park managed to make a short that feels like a feature. Interesting fact too, Nick Park actually went to the same university as me. Small world, huh? The short itself is beaming with quirky charm that makes me smile until I wrinkle. There's something so innocent and simple about a man and his dog going on holiday for cheese. Yet, Park has a knack for adding humour, imagination, and personality to the plainest of premises. Yes, it's all very far-fetched, but it's Wallace's naive optimism that helps us believe in the story and look over how nonsensical things get. It helps that Wallace is voiced by the wonderful late Peter Sallis, who sadly passed away last month. Sallis gives Wallace this quaint Yorkshire accent that adds an everyman quality to the character. It's a pleasure hearing his lovely voice fill the silent void throughout the short film.
Gromit, that's it, cheese. We'll go somewhere where there's cheese.
But that's not to say that the lack of voices from other characters is a problem, far from it. The fact that Gromit expresses all his emotions with his hand gestures, eyebrows and ears is a stroke of genius. Without saying a word, we can completely read Gromit's disgruntled annoyance at Wallace's bumbling buffoonery, just by making his brows cross or eyes roll. It's these subtle little expressions that made Gromit become one of the most iconic silent animated characters ever. Then we have the robot, who not only has no dialogue but also no face, yet we feel so much empathy for him. This is mainly thanks to his highly expressive actions and hand gestures. It's an amazing achievement to make an audience care about a character that looks like a cross between an oven cooker and a television. That's the magic of Nick Park for you. To conclude, A Grande Day Out is a charming little student film that showcases the potential talent that Nick Park had when he was younger. Let's now move on to the second Wallace and Gromit short, The Wrong Trousers. In The Wrong Trousers, Wallace can't afford any bills, and so he lets a penguin stay in Gromit's room as a paying guest. However, Gromit feels unhappy with the penguin's interfering presence in the house and decides to leave. He later learns that the penguin is really a thief called Feathers McGraw, who traps Wallace in his own techno trousers and uses him to steal a diamond. It's up to Gromit to stop the penguin and save his best friend from the wrong trousers. This second Wallace and Gromit film could have kept the same standards as the first film, but it impressively stepped things up a notch. everything looks much more fluid, refined and polished compared to a Grand Day Out. You can tell that Aardman put more support and budget into this second entry. While things have been upgraded in terms of production values, the short still retains the spirit and quirks of the first film. Aardman didn't completely gloss things over or do a whole revamp. They knew what things made a Grand Day Out work and tried to stay faithful to those aspects. The Wrong Trousers also develops Gromit more as a character. He's now more than Wallace's companion. He's being shaped into the role that he'll play for future adventures, that of a detective hero, sort of a cross between Batman and Charlie Chaplin. Gromit actively tries to investigate Feather's secret plans, going out of his way to see what he's up to and proving that he's a rather smart dog. What also adds to this fleshing out are little details indicating the repression and disrespect Gromit receives as a dog, despite his human-level intelligence. From a scene where Wallace humiliatingly ties Gromit to the techno trousers for walkies, to a moment where Gromit struggles to find a new home because landlords don't allow dogs. It's small details like these that help Gromit become a more interesting character in the series. The Wrong Trousers tries to go for a film noir feel too, and succeeds brilliantly in its ambitions. The shadowy lighting, sinister music, and tight angles all help to create this almost Hitchcockian level of cinematic value. Even though it's the silly story of a penguin and a pair of wacky robot trousers, the short is fully capable of being effectively dramatic. When Gromit has to deal with living with a complete stranger, losing his place as Wallace's loyal companion, and being kept awake at night by his new housemate's loud, annoying music, we can really feel the discomfort and stress he's going through. Then, when he has to make the decision to leave the house, you can tell how heartbreakingly hard it is for him to let Wallace go. It's all very powerful drama that's coming out of a tale of an evil diamond-stealing penguin, which is remarkable. Feathers himself is surprisingly creepy too. A lot of people have said that they found him to be scary growing up. Yes, Aardman actually managed to make a penguin scary. His beady little eyes, expressionless face, habit of staring at Gromit and lack of dialogue make him a rather unsettling presence. Because he never says anything, facially and verbally, we find him very hard to read, and that is quite disturbing because we struggle to know his intentions. Besides scaring us with a penguin of all things, the film also offers plenty of action and tension. When Feathers uses Wallace and his techno trousers to steal the diamond, we get a nail-biting sequence where the penguin is trying to maneuver a naive sleeping Wallace around the museum. It's a really tense part of the film that always keeps me on my toes every time I watch it. In addition, the film's finale is quite possibly the most impressive action sequence that Aardman has ever done. In this climax, our heroes are chasing Feathers around the house on Wallace's tiny toy train track, and it's heart-pounding fun. The detail sophistication behind this scene is jaw-dropping. Because the train is going at breakneck speed, the characters end up having to dodge a set of tables and chairs, plus Gromit must build a lot of the track himself as they go along. Imagine the patience and intellect you'd need to make a sequence that's this complicated. Adding to the finale's excitement is the fact that Feathers has a bloody gun! Yes, this is one of those rare occasions where a kids movie villain is armed. It's not a silly cartoony gun either, it's a real gun that could end up killing Wallace or Gromit, and one that he actively fires frequently at Gromit in the finale. I think what makes it so startling is because Feathers draws his gun out of nowhere, it's so random. At least with other children's films, if a villain has a gun, he's introduced holding it, foreshadowing its use later on. So it kind of takes you back when you see Feathers suddenly pointing a gun at Gromit. How long has he been hiding this gun? Is he hiding any other weapons? Cyanide? Bombs? I feel as if that the randomness of the gun appearing makes the penguin even scarier. What a way to add a literal bang to the end of a movie. To conclude, The Wrong Trousers is a highly polished and well-directed thriller oozing with tension, the kind of film that Hitchcock would have made if he embraced animation back in the day. Now let's move on to the third entry in the Wallace and Gromit series, A Close Shave. In A Close Shave, Wallace and Gromit take on the jobs of being window cleaners. The most common customer is a lady called Wendeline, who runs a knitting wool store. However, there's something shady about Wendeline's aggressive-looking dog Preston. Things start to get even fishier when Gromit is framed as a sheep killer and the innocent dog is sent to jail. It turns out that Preston is secretly rustling sheep and making them into his own brand of dog meat. using Gromit as his fall guy and Wallace's knitting invention as a slaughtering machine. The most notable upgrade for this Wallace and Gromit film is that it was the first short to include another talking character besides Wallace. That character being Wendelin, voiced by Anne Reid, who is very friendly, but personal guilt makes her hesitant to let others into her life. What is she so guilty about, though? Well, it turns out that Wendelin is secretly helping Preston Russell Sheep, who is abusing and overpowering her behind closed doors. It's pretty dark stuff for a Wallace and Gromit short. The romance Wendelin shares with Wallace is really sweet too. They connect on a special level because her late father was an inventor like Wallace. However, she makes their relationship hard to embrace because she pushes Wallace away, fearing that her evil dog will put him in danger. There's a sad tragedy to the divide between them because we can see some lovely chemistry between the two. This romance really is the emotional anchor for the short. Even as a kid, I wanted them to get together. You could say it was my first ever character ship. There's also the addition of Shaun the Sheep, who would later become a huge Aardman star with his own TV show and movie. Shaun is very cute and serves as the mascot for this story. His innocent adorability adds a unique contrast to all the dark elements of the short. It's no surprise that he became an Aardman fan favourite. In addition, the short leads to another high-stakes climax. Sure, it's a finale that doesn't top the wrong trousers, but that's a hard feat to achieve. In this last act, Preston has captured all the characters and plans to turn them into dog meat. But it's up to Gromit to play hero once again as he helms a little dog-sized plane armed with a porridge cannon. This plane is an awesome part of the film, being both badass and true to the silly nature of the franchise. Heck, I used to own a toy inspired by this plane. To make this climax even more entertainingly ridiculous, it turns out that Preston is a cyborg! This isn't an out-of-left-field twist either. We're given a little clue earlier on in the film.
Daddy didn't create you for this. Ouch! You're supposed to protect me.
It's a really exciting and fun twist that turns the finale into this thrilling, family-friendly version of the Terminator. But I will admit that little details in the overall story kind of confused me. Why was Gromit arrested like a human and put on trial like a human and then sent to people jail? The last film implied that dogs are seen as domesticated pets in this world, not creatures on the same level as humans. So why is Gromit suddenly being treated like a human? You'd think he'd be sent straight to a dog pound instead. I know that Wallace and Gromit is a very silly series, one that's not meant to be taken too seriously, but if you're going to set up rules for Wallace and Gromit's world in one episode, then at least stick to those rules in the next episode, or it's hard to know what the lines are for this universe's reality. Also, why doesn't Wallace attend any of Gromit's court hearings? Instead, he just reads about what's happening in daily newspapers. Wallace could have testified for Gromit. He knows him more than anyone else and will be able to defend him in court. The poor dog can't speak and would need a voice to talk on his behalf. I know that Aardman are limited to a 30-minute runtime because they're trying to squeeze themselves into BBC 2's schedule, and newspaper headlines make for a quick exposition. But having Wallace just sitting around reading newspapers instead of taking fast action makes him seem not very urgent about helping his friend. Sure, Wallace ends up rescuing Gromit from jail later on, but still, he could have acted sooner. You know what too? I will admit that a close shave feels like a retread of the wrong trousers. Much like the last film, it's about a shady villain using one of Wallace's inventions for evil, while a character ends up being an unsuspecting fall guy for the crime. Yeah, it's hard for me to shake off the similarities, and does make a close shave feel a little unoriginal. To be honest, I never thought I'd find negative criticism to give a Wallace and Gromit short, but surprisingly, I found some things in a close shave that kind of bugged me. To conclude, a close shave definitely has a lot going for it. Wallace's first romance, the introduction of Shaun the Sheep, and some pretty dark material for a Wallace and Gromit short. But I will admit that it's the most flawed entry out of the four because it can get a bit too convoluted at points. Now, let's move on to the fourth and final entry in the series, A Matter of Laufen Death. In A Matter of Laufen Death, Wallace and Gromit have started a baking business. One day, while on a delivery drive, Wallace ends up meeting a baking company poster girl called Paella, and the two begin dating. However, Gromit notices that Pyla's dog Fluffles looks uncomfortably scared, and he does some detective work to see what Pyla is really like. It turns out that Pyla lost her job as a poster girl because she gave in to baking confectionaries and gained weight. So she wants to kill a dozen bakers as revenge, choosing Wallace as her 13th victim. This has to be my favourite Wallace and Gromit short. It's fun, lively and colourful, but not afraid to get a bit dark at times too. Everything about this short indicates a change of pace for the franchise, making it feel excitingly fresh. It's interesting to note that this is the first Wallace and Gromit short film to have humans as the target victims. Heck, we actually get to see an on-screen murder. Sure, it's nothing graphic, but it's still a startling change of direction for the franchise. You see, the BBC gave Aardman free rein when making this film, so they had confidence to raise the stakes. It's also worth keeping in mind that most female characters in the Wallace and Gromit franchise have been kind and gentle love interests for Wallace, yet Pyla poses as a genuine threat for the poor naive man. I like that this tradition has been subverted. It takes us by surprise and keeps us nervous about what's ahead. The fact that Pyla knows that Gromit knows what she's up to definitely adds a lot of tension, especially because Gromit can't talk. He can't exactly go up to Wallace and say, "Hey, she's crazy and trying to kill you!" It's really fun watching Pyla and Gromit trying to outwit each other, because Gromit has a disadvantage as a mute and he has to think twice as hard to be one step ahead. Pyla herself is quite possibly my favourite Aardman villain to date. She's a joy to hate because she's so two-faced and slimy. We know she's up to no good, but she puts on this obviously phony act to seem sweet to Wallace. The fact that she frames Gromit for biting her and brutally hits her own dog makes her worth hating even more. We become engaged in her arc as a villain because we want to see her comeuppance. We despise her so much that we want to see karma take care of her. She reminds me of Umbridge from the Harry Potter films, who also tries to cover up her vindictive spite with a glamorous facade. Now, on the one hand, you could argue that it's fatphobic for Aardman to villainize someone overweight to this degree, but on the other hand, there's a human quality to a character's backstory, one that slyly criticizes the shallow expectations of the modelling industry and the pressures pushed upon models. I definitely feel as if that Pyla is the most fleshed out and interesting villain in the entire Wallace and Gromit series. Another thing that feels refreshingly new about this short is the addition of a love interest for Gromit, who has never had one before in this series. The short creates some adorable romantic tension between Gromit and Fluffles, going as far as showing Gromit blush for the first time, which is just too damn cute! I love the relationship between these two. Their chemistry is shown entirely through beautiful silent character animation. You can read so much emotion between them without either saying a single word. It's a lovely contrast from the darkly fabricated romance between Wallace and Pyla. Fluffles also reminds me of Wendelin, a kind character being abused and manipulated by the villain. It's very interesting seeing the film explore the same kind of character, but with a dog who can't talk, because we get to see it from a different perspective. She looks so disturbingly traumatized. I mean, this is a dog who has witnessed 12 murders, and her owner isn't afraid to hit her. It's rather heartbreaking. But what's awesome is that Fluffles actually gets to be an empowered badass and stand up to her abusive owner in the finale. In a homage to James Cameron's Aliens no less. If anyone is going to face Pyla in the climax, it's her longest surviving victim. To conclude, I love A Matter of Laufen Death. It's colourful, lively, energetic, full of thrills, full of action, full of drama, plus it can get pretty dark at times. Even though it had been 10 years since the last Wallace and Gromit short, the team had just finished working on Curse of the Were-Rabbit, the feature-length Wallace and Gromit movie. So they definitely felt comfortable sliding back into the series. With the recent sad passing of Peter Sallis, the voice of Wallace, it's hard to see where this franchise is going to go from here. Personally, I don't want to see any more Wallace and Gromit shorts or features if Sallis isn't going to be voicing Wallace. I don't think anyone else can do Wallace justice besides him. He was Wallace. So, which is your favourite Wallace and Gromit short and why? Let me know in the comment section below. I've been Jambareeqi and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please consider supporting me on my Patreon. It's also my 5th anniversary on YouTube this year, and to celebrate I'm going to be making a special countdown, and the entries of this countdown are going to be chosen by you. To learn more, click the link in the description box below. Cheerio folks.